Okay, we're on page 5 of our notes. And in this section, we're going to be talking about complex numbers. And complex numbers are simply just that. They are numbers that are complex. They have more than one piece to them. They are written in the standard form of A plus BI. Write that down here on this portion. And all this basically means is when you are writing your final answers, we want you to put the A part first, and the A represents the real number part, and then you want to put the BI part second, which is the imaginary. So, what does a complex number look like? Here's some examples. -4 plus 2i. That's a complex number because you've got the real and the imaginary. -3 plus I. That is complex. +6 plus 2i. That is also complex. Anything you see with a real number portion and an imaginary portion is a complex number. All right, so to simplify expressions when you add and subtract with complex numbers, all you have to do is combine like terms. The only caveat, the only thing you need to remember is when you are subtracting, you must distribute the negative. Distribute the negative into the parentheses. Distribute the negative. All right, well, that's only for subtracting. So let's start first by looking at the ones where we're adding. Number 1, what you see in this parenthesis is -11 plus 3i. Okay? What you see in this parenthesis is a +9 and a +2i. All you have to do is get together the real and the imaginary. Always put the real number part first, which is basically just what we call A plus BI form. Okay? And so that means I'm going to have -11 plus 9, because those are my real numbers, to give me -2. And then I'm going to take 3i and 2i and get 5i. Notice it's just 5i. It's not 5i squared. It's just 5i. That's all you do. You're done. For number 2, in the first parenthesis, you have 4 plus I. In the second parenthesis, you have 7 minus 5i. That 7 was a positive at that. Now let's get our like terms together. The 4 is a real number. The 7 is a real number. 4 plus 7 is 11. Now this has an invisible 1 right here. So that's 1i minus 5i, which is a -4i. That is your final answer. You are done. Now, this is where we're looking at some subtraction problems. It is so important, a lot of people forget this, but it's so important that you take that negative sign and distribute it into the parentheses behind it. So let me see. What we have here is 7 minus 2i. And then when you, excuse me, shut my door. And what you have here is -2 minus 6i. So this is what I've got. Now I can get my like terms together. 7 minus 2 is 5. -2 minus 6i is -8i. There's your final answer. You're done. Number 4 has a little bit more work, but you always want to look for subtraction signs again, because when you see a subtraction sign, you're distributing that negative into the parenthesis that's right behind it, okay? Now, this negative is going to distribute here and here. So then what am I doing with the 6i? Well, that's a rhetorical question. I'm going to tell you. You're just bringing the 6i down. Now, when I distribute the negative sign to both terms inside the parentheses, I'm going to have a negative 14. And then notice this negative times negative is going to turn into a positive I. What you have here, there's no negative sign, so all I need to do is just bring these down. Plus 5 minus 3i. Now I'm going to get my like terms together. Do the real numbers first. That's negative 14 and positive 5. Negative 14 and positive 5 is negative 9. And now this is a 6 plus 1 minus 3. Well, 6 plus 1 is 7, and 7 minus 3 is 4. So my final answer is 9 plus 4i. Next section, we're going to look at multiplying complex numbers. When you multiply complex numbers, there's one thing you need to remember. Write this down. It is very important, is that your I squared will always equal negative 1. So when we start distributing and multiplying on this section, if you see I times I, it becomes I squared. But you don't leave it I squared. You change it to negative 1 every single time. So let's start with number 5. You see that we are distributing a 2 into the parentheses. So the 2i times the 8 will give me 16i. And then I multiply the 2i times the negative 3i. I get negative 6, but then it's going to become I squared. From here, you cannot leave I squared. You are going to take this, cross it out, and then make it a negative 1. Well, if I have a negative 1 times a negative 6, that gives me a positive 6. When you bring this down, you have 16i. I just want you to swap it because I want the real number first. So your final answer is 6 plus 16i. And that's it. Number 6. I'm going to distribute the negative I that's on the outside to in the parentheses. Negative I times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 2i. A negative I times a positive 10i is going to give me a negative 10i squared. You cannot leave I squared. I squared, you cross out and make it negative 1. Well, it was touching a negative 10, so that means negative 1 times negative 10 is a positive 10. Bring down what was over here, and then switch them around, because you want the real number first. 10 plus 2i becomes your final answer. Now we're getting to my favorite. That would be multiplying binomials. Binomials mean there's 2 terms inside here and 2 terms inside here. You can do FOIL, but I prefer the box. So that's what I'm going to do for all of my multiplying problems when I have a binomial. Take what you have here, put it across the top. So I have 7 plus I across the top. And then I have 4 minus I on the side. Like a Punnett square, you are just going to multiply what you have. When you multiply to get in the Punnett square, you add exponents if you are multiplying I times I. This is just 4 times 7. So that gives me 28. This gives me negative 7i. In this box, I'll have positive 4i. And in this box at the bottom, I'm going to have a negative I squared. Recall what I told you. You cannot leave any time an I squared. So if I change this I squared to negative 1, but it's already a negative sign there, this bottom box now becomes positive 1. That's very, very messy. But all I'm trying to get you to see is that this bottom box now has become positive 1. Well, that means I have a like term up here with a positive 28. Remember in our answer, I wanted the real number first, so I'm going to proceed to write that down first, which is 29. And this here, these are my like terms that I want to get together. So that means I have negative 7i and a positive 4i. which is a negative 3i. No, you do not do anything to the variables. You just subtract the coefficients and you're done. The next problem, another binomial. So I want to draw my box and write what you have across the top. 2 minus 4i, negative 5 minus 3i. Multiply to get in the box. So that means this one will be negative 10. This will be negative 6i. This will be positive 20i. And this will be a positive 12i squared. Just realized this problem wasn't circled, so I didn't have to work it. I'm going to finish since I've already gotten this far. And now, remember, you cannot leave anything that has I squared. I squared becomes negative 1. So if I have a negative 1 times 12, this box becomes negative 12. So ignore what you see here. We have a negative 12 and we have a negative 10. That's going to give me a total of negative 22 for the real number. And then all I'm doing is taking 20i minus 6i to get 14i. Now, I shouldn't have worked this problem because it wasn't circled. And so because of that, I'm not going to work number 9, even though I circled that one. But I do want you to understand that what this is asking you to do is to write down your binomial twice. Because if it says that it's to the second power, this means you have 6 minus 2i times 6 minus 2i. Once you see this is the setup, you would just do the box method like right here, like we just did on 7 and 8 to finish simplifying. All right, let's look at number 10 because this has a lot of things going on. So first, binomial times binomial, I'm going to do a box. So this is going to be 1 plus 7i on the top, and then 9 plus 3i on the side. Go ahead and start multiplying. 9, 3i, 63i, and then this is going to be 21i squared. You cannot leave I squared. If you ever have I squared, you have to simplify it. So that I squared is going to become negative 1, and negative 1 will multiply this 21 here. So now I have negative 21, and that's what this box at the bottom becomes. I'm sorry, that's kind of sloppy. So I've got negative 21 and a positive 9. Come over here, and you're going to write what you get when you subtract those two. And it should be negative 12. Now this, come on here, look diagonally, gives me a 63 and a 3. So that's going to be plus 66i. And then on the next portion here, all you're doing is distributing that subtraction sign. So the subtraction sign is going to multiply into the parenthesis here and here. That gives me a negative 4 minus 2i. Now, last step, let's get the real with real and imaginary with imaginary. Negative 12 minus 4 is negative 16. And then 66 minus 2 is 64i.